Hey everyone, congratulations on getting through Module 1. Your final assignment in this module is going to be for you to go out and actually buy some fly fishing gear. But before you do that, I want to have one more unscripted, real conversation with you about cost and performance in fly fishing. So in other words, do we need to spend a lot of money to get good use out of our gear? I've been touching on this subject throughout Module 1, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. But what I want to do is walk you through each of the major pieces of gear in fly fishing and give you my honest opinion about how much you need to spend in this sport. I really hope this is going to save you some time and money as you begin to invest in your fly fishing career. So let's get started with fly rods, right? That was the very first topic we discussed in Module 1. So this rod here was the first rod I ever purchased in fly fishing. And I spent about, if I recall correctly, it was no more than $50, okay? And the honest truth is that I didn't have more than that to spend on a fly rod when I first got into this sport. So I went as cheap as I possibly could. Now, I caught a lot of fish on this fly rod, and I learned how to fly fish on this rod. This was the rod that I keep it around for sentimental value, and sometimes I'll fish it today, to this day, because of that sentimental value in that I learned to fly fish on this rod. Okay, so this is a $40 rod. This rod here is, I believe on the market, is like a $700 or $800 rod, okay? And yes, it's very expensive, and yes, I do own this rod. Now, do you need this rod to catch fish and fly fishing? I hope you know the obvious answer is no, you do not, right? Now, as you begin to fly fish, as you begin to experience the feel of a fly rod and know what it is that you yourself really like, you can begin to test out rods. And it may just happen that you really like the feel of these more high dollar rods. Now, many anglers that I know refuse to purchase rods that are $800. I mean, for obvious reasons, right? It's super expensive. And just because you have a really nice rod doesn't mean you're going to catch fish. Matter of fact, I know plenty of anglers who have all the best gear in the world, and between you and me, they can't catch fish. They're not too great at the sport of angling. And obviously it doesn't have to do with their equipment, right? It has to do with, do you know how to use what you have? And that's my point here in the rod thing, right? We talked about rods in the first video, in the rod discussion, is that you can do more damage if you know what you're doing. You can do more damage and accumulate more fish on a really cheap rod from Walmart or any fly gear retailer, right? Then you can just as much damage as you can do with an $800 rod. It has nothing to do with the rod itself. It has everything to do with whether or not you know how to use your equipment. And right now, if you're just starting out in this sport, or you have a lack of familiarity with what exists in the industry as far as fly rods go, it's going to be hard for you to know exactly what you like. And so my initial suggestion for you is that you go affordable, right? Go really affordable on your first rig. Don't spend, $2,000 on your first setup, on everything, because you just really don't know what you like. You might spend $800 on a rod, and 3 years down the road, you never fish it because you don't like how it feels. Well, you can't take that rod back and get your money back, right? So my suggestion to you is pick a really affordable outfit, we're talking about rods, pick a really affordable rod for your first time, your first outing, your first season in fly fishing, if you will. Fish with that a lot. See what it is you like about that rod. See what it is you don't like about that rod. And then after you've fished a rod for a season, then you can begin to experiment and go to your local fly shop, ask them, hey, can I get some fly rods in my hand? I want to test out a slow rod. I want to test out a fast rod. I want to test out a medium rod. I want to test out a 3-weight or a 5-weight. I know guys who fish 3-weight rods in rivers that you probably shouldn't fish below a 5-weight, but they love to feel every bit of that fight with the large fish on a smaller rod. That's their preference. All right, and you're going to find that you have your own preferences in fly fishing. The same goes for fly reels. This was the very first fly reel I ever owned in fly fishing. It was $30, and just like I showed you in the reel video, right, in the instructional video for reels, this was my very first rod ever, my very first reel ever. And it never failed me. I caught thousands, yes, thousands of fish on this reel before I ended up purchasing other reels. This reel here is a $500 reel, $500 to $600 in this weight. It's a 5-weight. I have a 5-weight line on here. And obviously a lot more expensive. Now it looks fancier. Perhaps the metal, you know, the aluminum they use or whatever material, I'm assuming it's aluminum since aluminum doesn't rust. You know, this reel is perhaps made out of better quality material. The drag system is probably much better. But this reel never failed me either. So I wouldn't advise you to buy a $500-$600 reel until you know why you're buying it. You know, do you need this reel to be successful in fly fishing? No, you don't. You can catch just as many fish on a $30 reel. You totally can. Now, one thing I didn't mention with rods and reels and pretty much everything else in fly fishing, this reel does not have a warranty. So if you break it, it cracks or whatever, that's it. You paid $30 and you got your use out of it. This reel here, it has a warranty. Now I haven't had to send this reel back. I have bent the frame up a little bit, falling on rocks and all that, right? But nothing that I couldn't fix on my own. But the high dollar gear, just like this $800 rod we talked about, you know, they offer warranties on these things, lifetime warranties, a lot of them, right? And they'll tell you if you break it, send it back in. If we can't repair it, we'll send you a new rod for a fee, right? It's not going to be free. You're going to pay $60 to $80 for a new rod for, you know, these high-end, sorry about that, dropped my rod, for these high-end rods, okay? You're going to pay $60 to $80 for the warranty repair. Now with cheaper rods, you don't get that option, you know? So same goes for reels. You're probably not going to get a warranty on a $30 reel, okay? It's not going to happen, but you will get a warranty on a lot of the more expensive reels, okay? And when I say expensive, I think there's warranties that are offered on reels starting at like $100, maybe even less. So do your homework. If the warranty is important to you, it may be worth investing in a little bit more of an expensive reel for your first rig. It depends on your needs. It depends how much you're going to be fishing, and it depends if you think that you're going to need that to use that warranty anytime in the future. I have nets here. Okay, same thing. This net here, you can find this net at Walmart for $30. Has the rubber bag. You know, the rubber bag's nice, like I told you about, because it really protects fish. This rod underneath it was like a $190 net. And it is a lot bigger. It stretches off the table over here. You can't even see the end of it. And that has something to do with how much more expensive this net is than this smaller net. But again, this net here will land your fish. Okay, you don't need a monster $200 net, $250 net. You'll see nets on the market now that are $200, $300. Okay, and they look really cool. A lot of people really like them. You know, but do you need that net? Is my point. Do you need that net to be successful in fly fishing? No, you don't. You can just get you a $30 net from your local fly shop or any retailer you have close to that sells nets, and you can do just fine on that. So that's the talk on nets. Fly boxes. Fly boxes themselves can get expensive, okay? So these fly boxes here, these are like, I don't know, $30 each, something like that. And they have like a nice material inside. You get your fly and you slide the bend of your hook into the slot there. And it's a really nice fly box. I like it a lot for my nymphs. But do I need to put my nymphs in this? No. For example, I have my streamers, some streamer patterns, in this little $2 or $3 box right here. I got this box at Walmart or Cabela's or something. I can't even remember. But I like it for putting my streamers in. But it was $2 or $3. Big difference in cost between this box and this box. They're both holding my flies, and I'm carrying both of those boxes. So even something as simple as fly boxes can become expensive in fly fishing. And this is something you're going to have to consider when you're purchasing your fly boxes, you know. But once again, I don't need this box to carry my nymphs. I can carry it in a $2 or $3 box, no problem. Okay. The issue with a box like this is that if you happen to turn this box over on the river, well, what's going to happen? Well, all these flies are going to come spilling out onto the river. Now I got to reorganize these flies, just to give you guys an illustration, for the sake of illustration. But anyways, you get my point, right? It's something that you have to decide for yourself. But what I want to do is relieve you of the pressure that you need, you know, to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to have fun in this sport. You do not. I fished a less than $100 rig for a while, you know, when I first started fishing. you know, and it did me just fine, you know. Let's talk about fly lines. So this fly line here on this rod was made by one of the top fly line manufacturers in the industry. You'll hear about them a lot. And I think it costs somewhere around $120 to $130. Now, the fly line that I had on this rod, on this reel, I literally bought it at Walmart for $10. It was an orange line. I don't know what the material was because it said floating line on it, right? It was supposed to float on the water and it never floated. It never floated. So I was fishing a sinking line basically, you know, even though it's supposed to be a floating line. And that creates for some frustrations, right? Because if you're fishing dry flies and your fly line sinking, your dry fly is going to get pulled underneath by your fly line. So the fly line, if it's supposed to be floating, it should float. And what you're going to find is that a cheaper fly line may not hold up to all the standards and the marketing that it has on its box and saying it is a floating line. Whereas an expensive line should do better, right? It really should. And what I have found is that on average, they typically do. So the fishing line, once again, I fished a really cheap fly line for years and years. And I don't recommend that you fish a floating line that sinks to learn how to fly fish, but I did. And I didn't know any better. Really, I didn't. It was sinking. I didn't know it wasn't supposed to sink. But you should know that now, right? We've been through the fly line, the fly line video, instructional video. So you should know that fly lines, if it's meant to float, it should float on top of the water. And that's going to impact the way you're fishing. So again, it's up to you on your investment. When you buy more affordable gear, you're going to find that maybe it kind of slips through the cracks on some of its promises as far as the actual use of that piece of gear. I mentioned in Module 1 a little bit that I'm not a huge fan of waders. I'm really not. And the reason is because, you know, here in the Southwest, if you're wearing waders, especially in the warmer months, you're getting hot. They make it more difficult to move around and stuff. But I have two really, really nice sets of waders that I use. And I personally like the ones with zippers because it makes getting in and out really convenient. But what I found with waders is if you're going to own a pair, I recommend buying the best pair that you can. That's my personal opinion on waders. And what you're going to find, let me put this pack over here. What you're going to find is that the more that you spend on your wader, typically the material right here from the hips down, if you will, is going to be thicker. Okay? And that's because they know when you're fishing, you're kneeling down on rocks, you might be sitting on gravel, you might be sitting on dirt, you're going through bushes, thorns, trees. So, you know, these waders are going to see some intense use depending on where you're fishing and how much fishing you're doing. So if I have to wear waders, which it's a last resort for me, but if I have to, I have the best set of waders that I can afford. And I own pairs with different brands, you know, because I've always wanted to see which ones are better. This one's half the price. This one here, it's a zipper. I believe the retail on this wader here is $400. And I own another pair of zippered waders from an entirely different brand, and they're like $800 or $900. And what I found is, sure, there's some differences in that wader. This material from the hip down is a Gore-Tex material. It's a lot thicker. I've never had a leak in those waders. Not to say they won't, you know, if you tear them, they're going to leak, right? But I've never had an issue in those waders. I've never had an issue in these waders either. And they're lighter fabric. So if I have to wear waders in the warm months, what I found is I wear my lighter set, right? So I wear these ones. They're a lot lighter. These ones are a lot bigger on me too. They're just newer also. So the older wader, eventually over time, the material begins to shrink a little bit, you know, from use. And I know some of you are laughing right now because you're thinking, well, maybe you just gained some weight. Well, maybe that's true too. But no, really what I found is waders do tend to shrink over time. And I've had that other set of waders for years and years. Thing is, I don't get rid of them because they're perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. But I did buy these ones because they are thinner, but still a good quality wader, you know. And like I said, I love the zipper. I love the zipper feature there. And, you know, I'll wear these, like I said, in warmer ones, or if I'm on a film shoot where I know I'm going to be in the water and I want to stay dry, but it's a little bit hotter outside, I'll wear these thinner ones. Now, the other ones I use dead of winter, you know, where it's going to be super, super cold and the water is going to be, you know, somewhere between 35 and 40 degrees, I'll wear those waders, and they just do better at keeping me warmer, you know, but again, I can layer up also in these ones too. So, you know, obviously I'm not telling you to go buy 3 sets of waders that you can have for different times of the year and all that other stuff. You're probably going to want to invest in 1 set of waders, you know, and my recommendation is to go to a place that sells waders, your local fly shop or a retailer that sells waders, and try them on. Try them on, make sure they're comfortable, make sure they're a little bit loose, right? We talked about this a little bit. But at the end of the day, buy what you can afford and don't go beyond that. Don't feel the pressure to spend an extra $200 or $300 on a pair of waders that, you know, is just too far outside of what you really wanted to spend, right? Because as you begin to tally up all these prices, which you were really on the research assignment you should have done, it adds up really fast, right? So if you buy an $800 rod and you buy a $500 reel and you buy a $400 set of waders and you buy a $200 net and a $100 pack and the list goes on, and tippets and fly line, you're looking at $2,000, $2,500 on your first set. And I just honestly, with all my heart, and I got really good friends who own fly shops and they're in that industry, and I know they'll appreciate your business. I just don't understand how someone first starting off in the sport would go and spend that kind of money, not really knowing what it is that they even like. You know, get to know what you like first. You know, spend some time with an affordable rod and reel, a fly line, a net, a pack, fly boxes, a set of waders. Spend some time with what, you know, is a little more affordable, and then you can say, you know what, these waders just aren't cutting it. I think I need to spend a little bit more money. Go buy you another set of waders. Same thing for nets. If you feel like you want a fancier looking net, then, you know, later on you can spend the money on that. Get to know what it is in the industry before you spend that money, because a lot of times you don't know what exists and you end up spending money on something, and then you see something else that you liked a little bit more. So if you take your time getting into the sport, take your time spending the money, you know, and my recommendation, once again, at the end of the day, get you the most affordable rig that you can. Spend some time, you know, with that rig, get familiar with it, and then you can figure out what it is you like or do not like about it, and have a good time shopping after that, right? There's no rush, right? You don't have to, there's no rush in spending a lot of money here. So I hope this just frank conversation helped you with understanding that there's a lot of fun to be had in this sport on this reel, $30 reel, and a $40 rod and a $15 fly line. You know, it's totally possible. My intent for you in this course, if you've never done this or if you're just getting into it, or even if you've been doing it for years, is to fish, and fish a lot. Whatever you have right now in your arsenal, if you've already bought some gear and you're just not sure how to use it, use what you got. Don't go buy a new rig yet. Learn how to use what you have, and then you can decide, yeah, I want to spend a little more money on this, or I want to spend a lot more money on this. You can kind of feel it out. But right now, use what you have a blast with it. It's totally fine. No pressure on spending tons of money in this sport. You can have a lot of fun with whatever you got, or a lot of fun with the most affordable rig that's on the market today. So I hope that conversation helped you out. Please let me know in the discussion for this video if you have any other questions on gear or warranties, and I'm glad to answer those questions for you. Thanks. I'll see you in Module 2.